Test. All right, everybody. I think a chunk of people got stuck in that traffic on the way here. So right now, I don't think we're at quorum. If we needed to wait a few more minutes, so I think we'll just wait another 3 to 4 minutes, and then we'll go ahead and get started. If we don't have quorum, it just means we can't vote on anything, but we can still talk about all the subcommittee things. So if we need to punt some of the stuff to vote, we could probably punt that to the end of the meeting, assuming more people show up. So we're going to give them, we'll say another 3 minutes, and then we'll go ahead and get started. So we'll be 10 minutes behind. Okay. Get started. We're still a handful of people short to make quorum, so we won't be able to vote on any action items as of yet. So we'll just keep tabs as people come in. We can go ahead and start. And I assume we're recording. Good, thanks. All right, so welcome in, everyone. This is our second meeting of the Shack. And let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so here's what we have on the agenda today. Obviously, welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm going to quickly recap the last meeting just so we can approve the meeting minutes. However, since we don't have quorum, we can't vote on those minutes. We'll look at community feedback and then Shack status with a few items to talk about, and then we'll go through the subcommittee updates. I guess we're probably going to have a few chairs that are missing, so if there are any chairs missing, then we can circle back around. Recap the last meeting. So the reason we didn't do this before, but I want to kind of do this since we vote on the minutes to approve each meeting. And so a lot of times we may forget what we talked about in the previous meeting. So obviously our first meeting was in September 23rd. We talked a lot about subcommittees. We talked about what Shack is. Dr. Povich provided information about the purpose of the Shack. We selected our parent officers. So if you don't remember, Stephen and myself will be operating as co-chairs for the Shack, and Passion is our secretary. So those are the officers. We didn't have any community feedback last meeting. We introduced the subcommittees. Like I said, we also talked about the Shack communication using we generally use email for official communication, and then we have the chat group, the chat app with GroupMe that we've been using, and we can talk a little more on that, on how successful it has been. And then we adjourn that meeting. Okay, so we'll have to come back to consider the approval of the minutes when we have a quorum. And Chris, you can interrupt me anytime you want on this. Yeah. All right, next item, community feedback. Do we have any community feedback?
Yes, we had two, and the first one was from a older brother student that was reporting that his younger elementary brother was being bullied. So I sent that to the administration at the appropriate school to look into that and address that. And then the other one was a junior high student that sent in a request to change his profile picture, which was the school picture for his student email. He had a really cool black and silver Spider-Man that he wanted that to be his new profile picture. So that's the two we had since
Awesome.
then. Anyway, the first one though, legitimate. I mean, heart goes out, older brother looking out for his younger brother. So that was good.
Did the second one get his profile picture updated? Yeah.
No,
okay.
I was tempted to tell him that I was going to take it. So anyway, it's pretty cool. Anyway, no.
All right. Thank you for that. Okay. Next is Shack status. So this is, I guess, new. Just to kind of recap the status from our co-chair perspective. So we had a subcommittee sign up form. It went out on October 3rd. We closed it October 10th. We also sent out an invitation for the GroupMe app for everyone to join in. If someone has not joined that yet and you want more notifications on your phone, go ahead and sign up. Do note you can silence those notifications and just check it when needed. You can also mute some of the channels. So if you're only in one subcommittee, you can go to the other subcommittee topics and you can mute those if you don't want to get those, okay? We did send a communication to the board that was just the officers group to introduce the new Shack, talk about the subcommittees that were created, and introduce everything that was going on. I did get a few responses from the board saying that they are very much interested to see what we're going to be sending them for recommendations this year. And we also had a request from board trustee Lindsay Dawson on the use of technology within the district. And I just wanted to make sure we include this because she had actually requested this with Dr. Spear, I want to say around April or May. So it kind of filtered over, and she was interested to see if we would like to take this up because we do still have plenty of time in the year to do this, although I will recognize that we are doing a lot already. So this is the exact request here that I copied pasted. As you can tell, it's looking at, I'll just read it. How much time are we using devices to teach during the day by elementary, intermediate, junior high, and high schools? And what does the research say about how much time is appropriate and healthy by grade level? I'm all for technology and working efficiently, but it should be balanced so we don't create further addiction to screens while inhibiting the in-person connection to teachers and classmates. Okay. So the request is that we take this up. This is on our agenda. Again, I have enough people come in that we have, do we have, what was it, 35 people? 4 more people? Okay, so we can't necessarily take a vote on this, but I would like to get any commentary if anyone has any thoughts on this request.
Is this on? Yes. I'm Tricia Monticello Keeveland. I'm curious, do you feel like this request falls under the purview of any of the existing subcommittees?
I would say no. It would probably have to be a new subcommittee or some type of work group, yeah. Carrie?
If you go to commonsensemedia.org, that's a really good one. It has a lot of research. They're actually based out of Austin. I went to a training with them once. So Common Sense Media has a lot of research on school for media and also for regular home. There's a lot of good information on that website.
Okay.
That's true. I actually write for that website. So yeah, they have a lot. Yeah.
Is the green light on? Yeah. Do you want to try a different mic just to make sure it gets on the video? Go ahead. Oh, sounds like it's.
Okay, yeah, now it works. Okay, sorry about that delay,
No
guys.
worries.
But yeah, I feel like if we were trying to muscle this into any subcommittee, it would probably be the mental health one. I know we were looking at addictions and substance abuse, and you definitely could draw some comparisons between screen addiction and that kind of addiction. I don't know that, this is my opinion, but I don't know that our subcommittee would have the capacity to really efficiently tackle this. It's something that I think should definitely be looked into, but I don't know. I can take other opinions on that.
Okay, Jennifer.
I don't even know where we would get that data about how much time we're using on devices, like polling the different teachers. Like that doesn't seem like
It
we
would
could
probably
get that.
require a survey of some kind. Yeah, it would probably be quite involved. I work in technology, and so this would probably be a very interesting topic. I don't know if we've already started how many different initiatives across how many different subcommittees, right? So I think this is probably a good one. I just don't know if we have the people and bandwidth to take it on who would want to, right? Unless someone wants to volunteer. And under mental health, we were even talking about separating mental health and suicide awareness or suicide prevention. So much so that I would hate to say it, to create a technology use subcommittee and add it to the list, which we can absolutely do that. And maybe this would be if we could find a way to have a shorter timeline on this, then maybe. Raleigh?
So the last couple of years, I mean, we had the task force that did all the cell phone stuff, and I know some of you people, or some of the old members served on that. That was kind of in the subcontext of mental health in the past, right? And we brought those points up in that subcommittee, and then we made recommendations, and then it kind of took off. Now, obviously, they banned the cell phones, which was, I think a positive thing, but in the schools, But this is an interesting question because I don't know how much they act like they use the iPads or the Chromebooks.
Mm-hmm.
So then sometimes I've seen that some might get in trouble because they get onto they're off task, right? Like they're in there supposed to be doing whatever assignment on a technology device, and I have heard, so is that what she's trying to look into further, or
we could have follow-up question and ask that question to get more information. I think if the time it'll take to respond, wait until us get the next meeting to vote and put the committee together, right? We wouldn't start till January, which, to be honest, maybe that would give us a buffer to figure out how we would want to formulate that, and maybe by next June we would have something that we could look at. Even if it's the first part of this, which would be to send out a survey, and then the next SHAC could take over in the next year and take it to the next step and compare policies on that.
This is something I do. I'm in ed tech for my real job.
Oh, nice.
And this isn't a question of mental health. This is a question of student engagement and outcomes. This isn't how much time you're spending on task using a device in a classroom is dependent upon what the instructor is trying to accomplish with that activity virtually, right? So if a student's off task, that's on them to be off task. It isn't a question of being addicted to the screen. They want to just go do with their friends, right? But to me, this is an academic question versus a mental health question.
I think, yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I guess it would be really important to find out what she's trying to get to, because I know at the high school level they're using Chromebooks and iPads for testing.
Right.
I mean, SAT, PSAT, STAR, all, I mean, so, I mean, it's inevitable. They're going to be on devices. So I guess, what is she trying to figure out? Because it's a tool that they have to use because we're not using paper anymore.
I think the general question is, I mean, the way I'm interpreting this is around essentially screen time. Go ahead.
Right, but you see what I'm saying, though? Testing, you're on a screen.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, is a teacher giving a lesson on an overhead projector anymore? No, she's using a computer. He's using a computer. So, I mean, if it's for a fun time, yeah, I get that. But
Yeah. Hang on, Dr. Kopeski. Kristen, did you want to? Oh, okay. Laura.
At the high school level, I can't imagine trying to respond as a teacher because your lessons are so different by subject and your implementation of a lesson looks so different depending on what unit you're on. So I can't imagine even trying to respond as a teacher, how much time are you using a screen device? Well, it's February. I've used it, every week, every day this week, but last week I didn't use it at all. So like over what period of time are you trying to make that assessment?
Right.
I just don't think it's an answerable question.
Yeah, that's a good question. Kristen?
Sure, Kristen Brown.
Yeah.
I think what, again, could be helpful is, given this information, if we find out what will we do with it, if it's about curriculum and what we're doing in the classroom, is that even open to change? Because that could kill this initiative quickly,
Yeah.
depending on what grade range, et cetera.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between the question of deploying curriculum and the question of how much is being used. That needs to be just directed to the school district, like instructional specialists that are developing these plans or implementing curriculum. That's not, I don't believe that's our purview. That's a decision by the people that's their job, kind of thing. On a health aspect of screen time and things, I think this would be a very easy reference to just say, here is research, there it is, but that's the health aspect. But on an instructional aspect, I don't think that's our purview. That needs to just be within the district's ability to be able to have instructional specialists say, oh yes, we have developed and deployed our instruction on the basis of utilizing this kind of like educational technology.
Dr. Kopeski, thank you.
No, I was just going to add that it's not the addiction to the screen that is the concern. It's what's on the screen. So they're not going to be addicted to taking the test on the screen. They're addicted to what's on it, which might be the social media or the text app or text, group text. So that's what the concern is with the research and screen use. Like I said, it's not what they're doing on the screen in the classroom because they're not looking at social media, but it's what's on it is the concern.
Okay. Vic, do you have another question?
This is an apples to oranges comparison because you're talking about, if I'm sure, websites in CIC are restricted. Certain websites are restricted, correct?
They're supposed to be.
It's like saying you can't do this, but we get around it. But so the policy is we have websites are restricted. We have kids being little devious little things. God bless children. So screen time on an iPad, uncontrolled by environment, is much different than having screen time academically with either formative or summative assessment. So it's a much different kind of interaction of a screen versus just I'm on my phone for 5 hours on TikTok versus I'm testing or I'm got to do this kind of assessment. So I think it's a little bit, it's hard to give a true measure of screen time in this academic environment here. It's outcome based.
Well, I had a question and a comment. So this is my first time being on Shack. So is this normal that like a trustee would send a question down to us?
Generally, it would have been before our first meeting.
Oh, okay.
We would have tried to tackle this early, but since it's still so early for us, or of course we're now getting into it, I wanted to make sure we at least discussed it.
Yeah,
Yes,
for sure,
yeah.
for sure. So I kind of am in the same vein of it's more of an academic thing, like as a product of the 80s, education in the 80s, like technology can be new and, distracting, but just because we use the word addiction doesn't mean that like it's a mental health issue, because I mean PTOs raise thousands and thousands of dollars
Right.
so that we can buy carts of
That's right.
Chromebooks for our kids to use. So, I mean, technology is the world that we live in now. So, I mean, it's going to be a part. It has to be a part of education.
Yeah, Kristen.
I do want to bring up, there is a virtual school for Conroe ISD that
Yeah.
it's,
That's a
it's
fantastic
probably
point.
pretty high. And again, what are they going to
Okay.
do with that information?
Well, I will take an action item to follow up with Trustee Dawson and get more clarification, and we can come back next meeting on this. Okay. All right. Let's move on. Okay, so now we're going to go through subcommittee updates for each chair. If you're here to go through, if a chair is not here, then if someone from the committee will step up and talk. But before we do this, I wanted to quickly go over goals. So I attended probably 4 or 5 meetings. Steven attended a ton of these, and he's also the czar of the Zoom now. So if you need to set up Zoom meetings, he's your guy. And I'm glad that we were able to attend those. But I think there were some members who very early on are trying to figure out, well, what are we doing, right? What's the purpose? What's the output of SHAC? And I want to just reaffirm, because I think many of us, especially the chairs, are trying to get the committee's focus. And I just want to make sure that we have some idea on, like, what are we doing here and what's the output? So when we go through the subcommittee updates, I do want you to think about the ultimate output. And some of it may be something very simple, right? If the subcommittee just needs to output like a survey and provide some data to the board, right? That could be something there. So I'll just quickly go through these. So number one, we obviously have subcommittees for the SHAC internal processes. So bylaws, compliance, membership, those are internal things that just manage the SHAC. Number two, and these are, by the way, these are examples. There could be other categories here, but collect data and report it to the board in the district, right? So if there's something important that we need to talk about, that kind of the technology use thing, like that could be probably be a survey if we actually went through that. It can include parents, students, those kind of things. So if the subcommittee's ultimate goal is like, hey, we don't have any information on this, can we at least get data and provide it to the board? Then that could be useful. Then that subcommittee would have accomplished something by the end of the year, right? So that's still important. Number two, create and implement communication campaigns with the board. So obviously, like suicide prevention, obviously there's a ton of material out there, but if it's decided that, hey, we can improve suicide prevention by using these materials and implementing this communication plan, working with the district to provide these resources, then that would accomplish something as part of that subcommittee. And then finally, the bigger one is recommending complete changes, right? So curriculum changes, board policy changes, anything around that, like physical fitness. If that committee finds that the district is not meeting Texas law or is not meeting a certain requirement. So these are just examples of what it could be. So I want to make sure we're all kind of on the same page that there are different levels to what each subcommittee can accomplish, and I don't want us to get bogged down in what all can we do and what all do we have to do, right? If we can accomplish something very straightforward for a subcommittee, I think it's still a win by the end of the year, and then we can report that, okay? If we provide the board information, that is progress, right? Because we've collected it, we put it together, we have a parent voice, district voice, and we provide it to the board for information, okay? So I just want to make sure we put that in there in case anyone had any questions like, what are we doing here? This is it, okay? Okay, so first up is bylaws.
It's me, Kristen Brown, and I am Oak Ridge High School Feeder Zone. So we are one of those internal process management subcommittees, and we've had one meeting, and it was about deciding goals. And so our primary goals are, one, to review the quorum requirement that had come up last year during the SHAC meetings, and was something that had gotten voted down. So we're not going to recommend changes yet, but kind of look at the data of what attendance has been, see if there's a sweet spot for making sure we have correct representation and not
I'd like to know
holding us back.
we're not at quorum at the moment. So.
Exactly. You've mentioned that about 5 times.
Yeah.
Another opportunity I see, because I was on a couple of different committees last year, was there are subcommittees mentioned in the bylaws, like membership, like compliance, and they have their own little section. Membership has a few pages, and just providing the opportunity for those subcommittees to review their parts of the bylaws and provide any updates or clarification if they have any desire. So all of these subcommittee leaders should have gotten an email from me this week reaching out. And if you didn't or it got lost, come find me. And our last primary goal was recommended by Ryan, the data request process. I know there is kind of a spoken procedure, but we want to make sure that if there's anything documented make sure it's sound, and if not, consider if we want to add something to it. And then secondary, if we get around to it, it's 14 pages and it is cumbersome and it reads like bylaws. So looking through it to see what could be clarified, what could be simplified. Last year when I first read it, I would see all these requirements and I'd wonder, well, is this the Texas law requirements? Is this local requirements? And I love a footnote. So adding some of that kind of detail just for posterity's sake to know what we have the opportunity to change, what we don't, and make it a little bit more readable by the common person. If we can get that done, it'd be great.
Win-win. Yeah. Has anybody ever been part of their HOA? As in on your HOA? Yeah? No? Nobody? Oh, we got one? Okay. All right. Well, I was going to just compare it to doing that. It's kind of like pulling teeth, but be okay. All right. Compliance subcommittee.
So I'm the compliance subcommittee chair, Jen Thomas. We had a meeting and I'd gotten the spreadsheet from Ryan that they had used last year in the compliance subcommittee that goes through all the different sections in the Texas Administration Code, and it's kind of broken up by topics. And so as a group, we divided up who's going to, examine each topic and figure out whether we are or are not in compliance. So that's what we did, and our next task is to do that. So all we've done so far is divide it up, but we're on it, and now to respond to Kristen's bylaw. I'm on that too, at least theoretically.
All right, thank you. Membership subcommittee.
Membership subcommittee, it was actually very brief. We met to determine that we will reconvene after the holidays to determine what our protocol is for membership for the upcoming year. Very short, sweet, and to the point. There's nothing going on at the moment with membership.
Perfect, thank you. All right, I think Stephen has to run here in a minute, so we're going to skip to which one, the teacher wellness? Yeah, we'll come back to the other one. Stephen has to roll out here in a second.
Sorry, I am about to be part of the cause of not having a quorum. You can thank CP High School's cross-country banquet. So teacher wellness and retention, we've had 2 meetings so far talking through exactly what the title of it suggests and everything. Big thanks to Dr. Klepesky for being really a big resource for being able to give feedback of what goes into trying to retain teachers and provide for their wellness. We've talked through a few aspects, such as what's one of the drivers for either retaining teachers, but also what is driving the turnover of teachers overall. We've talked through a few things that have been survey. There's 2 surveys going on, one by the new superintendent, as well as an outside company that is trying to gather a lot of data, a lot of information points. We don't have a set time whenever those results are going to be released, but we're trying to stay plugged in, get that information, and make that part of our initiatives for what we can provide back to the board for suggestions on retention. Also, a few discussion points that we've had. There's an ethics point hotline for employees to be able to have a reporting process that's very clear and understood, but it seems to be something that not as many people are aware of, so we're trying to see how we can emphasize that in some of the communications that go out to staff. Also, what can be done for encouraging leadership at campuses to be engaged, but also really support the staff there at those campuses. And then the social media impact on teacher morale, some of the various little subgroups that pop up on different social media feeds as being a primary place where a lot of parents will go to initially for trying to get feedback on either general information on things happening with their school or within the district, and trying to see how can we engage them to get some of the information just directly from the district rather than that particular avenue, because sometimes you can end up going down a rabbit hole on some of these different groups. So at the moment, we're waiting on some of the survey data. We're going to keep on talking through some of the information with relation to the communication that goes out on newsletters, really trying to make sure we stay plugged in with the new superintendent and get his feeling for what we can be doing to promote some of the teacher wellness and retention. Dr. Pessy, do you have anything else you wanted to add or anything? So we haven't set our next meeting date, but we'll have another one probably in December, but we'll have another update coming up.
Good. Y'all didn't have any requested actions. Obviously, we can't vote on it, but there was nothing in particular. Okay. All right. Thank you, Stephen. We're going to go back. All right. We're going to talk about membership. All right. Physical activity and fitness subcommittee. All right, Gemma.
Oh, there we go. Thanks so much. Hi, so my name is Gemma Smith, parent at Oak Ridge Feeder. So there was a lot when it comes to like physical fitness and activity. We did kind of revisit last year's progress, and we ultimately decided not to revisit it, just because our hands are kind of tied when it comes to policies and stuff like that. And the wellness policy for Conroe ISD, we can't change that until 2028. So we can make suggestions, but apparently the policies are in place. Like, that's it. We can't make any changes to that. Now, what we did kind of want to look more into is there's something called FitnessGram, and this is kind of like an assessment that's done with all the children to see like their fitness levels, to take their height, their weight, and they're recording this data. But we're not really doing anything with it. Like, apparently parents can access it, but it's not really, you have to like a written request, you have to do it at the end of the year. So what we're wanting to try and like figure out is how can we use this data? How can we make this, more important for like the parents to access it? Because a lot of parents aren't aware of it. Like, I wasn't aware of it, and I'm a parent. And then with that, we want to develop a survey because we want to contact the PE teachers just to see like how they're using it. Because like, I'm not personally a teacher, but some other of the members do know PE teachers, and apparently it's quite, not strenuous, but it's a lot of information they're having to collect. They're having to do over a space, like a period of time, and we just want to see if they can have help with that, what we can do to improve how that's done at schools. Another thing that we kind of discussed was like, when it comes to like volunteers coming to the schools and stuff like that, and teaching about nutrition or a new sport or something like that. And what was discovered is a lot of the time we'll have these lists, but they're not actually done by feeder. Like, if you contact someone, they'll be like, well, we don't go to that school, that's too far for us. So what we want to do is maybe kind of make a comprehensive list per feeder for the school, so schools can have a list that they can look at what's available in their area. Do it by like the service and the TEKS, age group, just so it's easier for the teachers basically to find what they need. Another thing we talked about was creating and developing new initiatives. I did meet with Haymark and Bridget, and they says they're all for new initiatives. So two that we kind of talked about was like a family nutrition night, just because we did discuss that, and there's not really anything like that. And another thing we talked about was adopt a school, because something else that we kind of noticed was kind of when the Title I schools and equity, like access to sports and like equipment is not the same in every school. So we want to figure out how can we make this kind of like equal across all the schools. And we thought about something about adopt a school, like a Title I school, how can we fund them to get more equipment? And what I will say is they did fund all the Title I schools this year with some of the funding that was left over, so they did get new PE equipment, which is good. And then, and the last thing was we had talked about school gardens. We might be thinking about doing that again, but we want to kind of like gauge the interest of what schools actually want to do it. We do have a couple of stakeholders that we're going to contact, but again, it depends on space, who actually wants to implement it. There was 2 schools, and I can't remember the name of them, but there's 2 elementary schools that have a garden club, and apparently it's super popular. The kids love it, and it's interactive learning, it's learning about nutrition, but not every school is going to want to do it, and there's the problem with like who's going to look after it, after summer. So we're hoping we can contact schools to see who would be interested in implementing that. And we have so much more, but we had to focus on specific ones. And that's it.
Okay, good, awesome. And I don't think there was no direct action item. Y'all are still working on a lot. So, all right, good. Okay. All right, great. We are going to talk about actions here in a moment, just related to data collection. We'll talk about that at the end. Okay, mental health, suicide prevention.
So Kristen and I are co-chairing this subcommittee. So I'm just gonna, we had 2 meetings so far, and our subcommittee is the biggest one. So there's a lot of as we discussed in both meetings, there's multiple topics that we want to try to cover, discuss, or, and so we were trying to then maybe hone in and focus on maybe key things, because otherwise it gets to be overwhelming. There was a lot, because in each one there's like so many different things that we could talk about or do. So one element that we discussed was talking about suicide prevention and mental health resources. And we were talking about what can we do within the schools to see if there's a gap, and why is there a gap? Is there a gap? What's the perception by students, teachers, counselors? One of the things we asked for was the district ratios for counselors to students, and and then maybe comparing it to, I don't know if there is a way to compare it to other districts, or just is it good or not good. But we started to review that information given to us. And I think one thing we want to work on next, and that's our first big task, is send out surveys and then we're going to think of questions as to what are their gaps, or what is their perception with mental health and resources within the schools. And I think we're focusing primarily on junior high and high school, I think, but it's just still to be discussed. And I'll let Kristen add any other additional comments.
I'm a teacher, but I'm speaking as the parent now in this venue. But I, as a parent, I always thought that if the student had a problem or a concern, they could go to their counselor. This is just what I thought. And I also thought that the counselor was the source. Well, I actually thought the counselors provided some sort of mental health treatment or help or something. We've come to learn in our group that they have a lot of duties, and the ratio is one of the things we learned. I was completely taken back when I found out that in the elementary schools it's 800 to 1. 800 to 1, that's right. And in the high schools it's anywhere from 400 to 600 counselors one counselor per student. 600 per one counselor per student for 600 students. So the problem then becomes, even if they have access to referrals, there's just not enough counselors to help them. So one of the things we're zeroing in on these surveys is to try to find out exactly how we can bridge the gap and where the barriers are, and somehow figure out a way to get the resources that the students need when they need a mental health referral. The feedback that I get from some students is they already know that the counselors aren't available, so they feel kind of helpless. So we want to figure out a way to get them those surveys, get the information together so that we can present information eventually to the board on how we can come up with a plan to make sure that there is access to services for the students.
Okay, good. All right, thank you. All right, physical safety. Oh, I'm sorry, Tricia. We had talked about separating suicide prevention into its own thing. Do y'all feel like if y'all focus enough on what you were just talking about, that they can stay in the same subcommittee, or do these need to be like two initiatives on their own? I guess because with mental health, I know in our first meeting we had talked about a lot. You know.
Yeah, there's like 4 subgroups. I think we're focusing more honestly on like suicide prevention, resources, and mental health. In with that comes, you know, they talk about addiction or drug abuse. You know, there's different groups within this, and there's a lot. I mean, we are fine with if someone wants to take charge and have another subcommittee because they want to focus on one of those topics. That's totally fine.
Well, even with the subgroup, if you have someone that's a lead, right, and they can talk during this meeting as under mental health, it's just a formal thing, right? It doesn't really matter if someone's going to take charge on that, and y'all understand that as a subcommittee. I don't see any issue with it. I just want to make sure it's understood that, you know, the focuses for mental health is going to include suicide prevention, and it sounds like y'all are already addressing that with looking at the data, and I think this is an awesome thing that the board could absolutely be included in with even a communication, or, you know, I would hope that maybe we could go visit the board at a public meeting. I'm sure that would be awesome if a lot of us showed up and talked about the same thing as part of SHAC. Okay, I just want to make sure that that's the committee's good and that we don't need to split it up, or if we do, then maybe that's just a thing that y'all have within internally. But if you like need to have your own meetings, I don't see any issue with that. So if there's a suicide prevention subgroup meeting, we can get with Steve and get a Zoom meeting going. It's fine, right? It's just a formality at this point, really.
I think during the meetings,
This data for January 1st to October 27th to try to get us a sense of what sorts of incidents they're seeing. So they had a total of 19. 11 years old was the youngest patient age. And again, this is the hospital district, so this is folks who are transported by ambulance or otherwise receive intervention from paramedics following some sort of collision on our roadways. So 11 years old was the youngest patient age, 54 years old was the oldest. The age range from 11 to 15-year-olds was 12 people, so more than half of the incidents involved folks under 15, and there were 7 patients over that age. There's a pretty wide spread of when these things happened. We were curious if these might have happened mostly during school commute times. Turned out that wasn't quite it, that 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. is only a total of 4 incidents out of those 19. Even more happened after 5 and on the weekends. Additionally, and this is a really telling thing, which might be something we could move the needle on in a pretty simple way, of the folks who were in these incidents that were reported, 4 of them were wearing helmets and 15 were not. The injury pattern was 9 patients with minor injuries like bumps and scratches, 9 with moderate injuries, meaning lacerations, single bone fracture, and then 1 with a major injury, like a major fracture or internal organ damage. 10 of them ended up at local hospitals and 9 were not transported. So it's good information. What's also sobering to consider about this is that these are only the ones that we know about, right? So these are the ones that were transported by ambulance or who received intervention from paramedics. These might not be the only incidents that have happened that have resulted in injuries in our community. You can go back to the last slide, please. So we would love to do, I think the tasks in progress we have are outreach to PTOs. Another subcommittee member mentioned that this would be especially good to do on campuses with grades 5 and 6 because these are the peak solo bike and scooter commuters in our community. So we really want to understand what their current issues and needs are. We also want to develop an approach for outreach to crossing guards. I'm on the board of Bike the Woodlands Coalition, our local bike and pedestrian advocacy organization, and there's a crossing guard from Powell who keeps coming to all the Woodlands Township board meetings to talk about what he's seeing as a crossing guard. And so he and I have a lovely email correspondence going with what he's seeing, what I'm seeing. I think he would be a great person for us to talk to, and other folks who know their crossing guards could be really good people for us to get insight from about what they're seeing and what they perceive as the needs. With that kind of thing in mind, we also want to develop a survey to gather insights from parents and school faculty and staff and community members who care about this issue. We're interested in obtaining data from Conroe ISD Police with the guidance and approval of the SHAC, and also interested in obtaining similar information from the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office with shack and admin guidance. And again, the idea would be to pursue the information from Conroe ISD first, just to make sure that we're going in the appropriate order for getting information from appropriate jurisdictions. And I actually had a conversation. There was a child, 14-year-old child, who was riding one of these mini motorcycles going 45 miles an hour on Woodlands Parkway, or no, on Lake Woodlands, where the speed limit is 40 miles an hour. Sheriff's deputy chased this kid into my neighborhood and stopped him and actually detained him. And his parents came and very sheepishly walked the mini motorcycle back to their house. But this sheriff's deputy told me that he's taken upon himself that he is pulling people over and talking to parents and trying to really say, these are not safe for children to be riding. Don't buy these things and don't let your kids ride them. And so I got his card and said I would love to chat with him in the future. But the first and most, I think the most appropriate thing from what I understood from talking to Ryan and Stephen would be to interact with CISD police and understand their perspectives as we continue to gather data about what's happening out there and what people are interested in.
Awesome. Yeah. We'll talk more about data right at the end when we're done.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Environmental health. Carrie.
So we are a new subcommittee, so we just started, and we met once on October 22nd, and we agreed on 4 topics. The subcommittee will address air quality, water quality, cleaning supplies, and the 5G towers. Please note about air quality, there was actually an incident at McCullough Junior High, and I do read all the social media boards, and it came up in one of the Woodlands Moms group, and that's where my youngest goes anyway. So I heard about it, but they're doing construction, so there actually was a small fire there. And what happened is they got them all out, everybody was safe, that's great, but did anybody test the air after? Like, these are questions that people are asking on social media. We had serious concern about it. I know that's a real issue, especially when they're doing construction while the students are there. So we wanted to really address that. So we do have some questions on that, on the questions that we're seeking data about. So we requested data on the 4 topics above. Once the data is received, another meeting will be held and the committee will make suggestions on these topics. And, you know, we already have some goals that we put, like for the 5G towers. Obviously, there's some, we don't know how long they've been there and what the contracts are with these telecommunication companies, but since Conroe ISD is building a lot of new schools, we want to know if they are going to allow them on these new school grounds. And if so, they need to look at the new data that I have, because I researched this topic thoroughly and had a PowerPoint that we did in here when I first joined the SHAC committee. And one of the things that I noted in my research is that the telecommunications companies, they are basically allowed to do whatever they want when it comes to safety, because the safety data has not been updated since the mid-90s. So they're still using safety data in the mid-90s. And in 2020, the EPA and some other organizations decided to try to update them, but it didn't pass. Like, they had all these great updates, but apparently it didn't pass. So we have to take it upon ourselves as school districts, because they are being banned across school districts across the country, to really look into this, because they're not doing their job. The agencies that are supposed to protect us, you know, like I said, it hasn't been updated since 1996, which, I mean, obviously 5G didn't exist then, so why are we not updating it? That's what I want to know. So the school district will have to look into the data I had, and hopefully our goal is we'll be at least able to not have them on the new school grounds that are being built.
All right. Thanks, Carrie. Okay, I think that wraps it up. So Stephen talked about teacher wellness. Okay, so I wanted to mention actions. So, and pretty much it's data collection, right? So how we request data from the district. So we, in our bylaws, we generally in the past, we have requested as a shack. And again, this is the largest shack we've ever had. This is the most initiatives we've ever had, most subcommittees, right? So it's kind of getting everybody's request in. And if we start peppering the board and district with all these questions, it's going to be chaos for them, right? And it's probably counterproductive. So what Stephen and I were talking about was that instead of coming to a shack and as a group, us voting, obviously we couldn't do that now because we're not in quorum. We have to have, I think, 34 and a half people to be here. We would have to vote to do that in the past. And the vote would be like, okay, does everyone agree that we're going to send the request to the district to get all this data and we have to vote on that. But since we don't necessarily have that process built into our bylaws, and that's something we're going to work on, the request is that Steve and I, as co-chairs, basically field all the requests, and we funnel those together into small increments to Chris and the district, or I'm sorry, the board president, so that they can approve them that way. And I want to basically make sure everyone understands what that means, is that basically the subcommittee chairs would be sending us the requests for information. We would consolidate it, package it up, and once a month or however often we get it together, we then send it to the board for approval. The board would then, if approved, or I guess I think just President Odenwiller has to send that on. It's not really a formal thing for the board. That then it would go to the district, and they would have to run with it. We'd have to wait for the district, collect the data, bring it back, right? So does anyone have any issues with Stephen and I running point on data collection, that we would not have to come back and ask the full SHAC membership? Okay, does anyone have any no comments, or is everyone a yes? Yes, okay. Christy, I don't see any issue with, no, okay, because it's basically how we manage it as a SHAC, right? Okay, perfect. Okay, any further comments on that? No, okay. Do we have any requests for future agenda items? Okay, obviously if you do, you can email us, we can add it to the agenda. I think the one thing I took is that we will follow up with Trustee Dawson on the technology request, and then we'll come back on next meeting and discuss it. Go ahead.
Similar, I noticed on multiple of the subcommittee updates, there were surveys that they wanted to do for different parents. I could suggest that maybe we try and compile all those survey questions together to get to
like
one.
A general SHAC survey.
Yes.
Yeah, that's probably a great idea. Yeah. And that would be different of what the superintendent's doing, right? He's surveying teachers and staff. They're not surveying parents, are they? They are. Okay. Maybe our survey would be best if it was done near the end of the school year, when everyone's been through an entire school year and they want to provide positive and constructive feedback for the district, right? Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's the other side of that. Yeah.
Sorry, her question was, is there a time frame on the surveys? There are going to be digital surveys going out that people will respond to electronically, and then there are focus group meetings involving students, parents, people at the district level, principals, teachers. All of that is being conducted now, so that's going to take quite a bit of time, to be honest. At this point, we have all of our student groups, which will include junior high and senior high, on December 3rd and 4th. Parents are going to be scheduled later, so there is no time frame at this point that I can see.
A SHAC survey. Mm-hmm.
Across the country.
Sorry.
I think it's a great idea. I just want to repeat that, for us to do a brief survey so that we're not just shooting in the dark. We can look at research across the country, but I think we can look at research across the country on these issues, but then also CISD. So, and I'm thinking of teacher wellness specifically, that committee, because our recommendations need to be targeted to CISD. So I think it's very important that we do a survey, that it's very brief and thoughtful. And I think that the most interesting piece would be just an open comment, like leaving people a spot to actually write their thoughts that maybe we missed a question.
Right. Okay, great idea, Vic.
Thank you.
What options do we have if quorum remains elusive?
It's a great question. Yeah. So part of the bylaw changes that one of the ones I recommended, but there's concern around changing quorum requirements, because then you have a smaller number of the membership making decisions on behalf of the rest. It's like asking the school board that, well, you only need 3 members instead of 4 for the majority, right? Like, so I would say there's some options we could do that we would have to approve with a full quorum, where we would have some type of some type of math on, because it's not only the full membership quorum, we also have to have a parent quorum. And so there's those two pieces. So I know the bylaws committee is working on it. So basically we'll have to wait till next meeting to approve that, which would apply to the meeting after. Right?
Is it possible is there part of our bylaws to have votes virtually?
I don't think we have any policy, dude. I think you have to be in person yeah, I want to, go ahead.
The meeting is recorded and if possible streamed. And so it can be attended virtually, but I think the bylaws specify that voting has to be in person.
Yeah, we were only like 2 people short until Stephen left, so we were right there. And I think obviously the traffic was crazy. This is obviously a lot of people were off work today, and so this may have just been bad timing on our part for the meeting. Okay, any further questions? Yes, the quorum can be changed in bylaws. We just have to vote on it as a shack. Yeah, basically we would be agreeing that less people would mean less people can make the decisions. That would be the vote. Yeah. Oh, yes. We could make that a priority. Yeah, that we're going to vote on quorum changes. Although the bylaw committee still we need to work out what that would look like. If anything, maybe we just make it a tad bit more lenient, right? Maybe by 5 people. And so it's not super crazy that where you only have 10 people making decision on all 69 of us, right? So that's how many people are in our shack. So yeah. Oh, to put it on Zoom? Oh, yeah. I don't know, but then y'all would all stay home and attend on Zoom. You know you would. I would. Okay, we can certainly talk about it. I personally wouldn't be in support of that, but if that's, if the shack can even operate that way, I don't know. Okay, anything else before we close out? No? All right, well then we don't really need a motion for that. We're closing at 5:36. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you.